One is to congratulate the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga for running this race. As many of my colleagues have said, it was not about Raila Odinga, it was about Kenya. And I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we left Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and I'm happy by the comments of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga when he says he's coming back more energized and more focused going into the future, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the 22 nations from African Union who stood for the 7 rounds, Mr. Speaker, for Raila Odinga. In 2 rounds he emerged, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it is not easy to go 7 rounds. We know people who go 1 minute and 59 seconds, Mr. Speaker. But for at his age, Baba Raila Odinga could manage to go for 7 rounds in African Union, Mr. Speaker. So we celebrate and appreciate what he did. 7 rounds at his age is not easy in African Union contest, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, as a country, every cloud has a silver lining, Mr. And I don't know why Senator Amida is excited about the rounds. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to digress. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, I want to assure the nation, and even, Mr. Speaker, thank President William Ruto for magnanimity. You remember in 2022, the presidential election was close call. But out of magnanimity of President William Ruto, when Raila Odinga declared that he will run for African Union, President William Ruto did not look at Raila as the opponent that he defeated in general election. He looked him as a brother, as a statesman, as a Kenyan, and that is why Raila Amolo Odinga had at his disposal the entire government machinery to campaign across 51 states of Africa, Mr. Speaker, and share his vision for a better Africa, Mr. Speaker. I was disappointed that some people in parts of this country, others in social media, could celebrate the loss of Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga never lost anything. It is Kenya who lost, because it is the standing in the League of Nations, Mr. Speaker. Let us not confuse. If it is about losing, Raila has developed a thick skin of losing many elections, Mr. Speaker. But he has always looked at the brighter. He has been the safe pair of hands when Kenya is in turmoil. From 2007, Mr. Speaker, in 2018, and the other day in 2022, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say what the people who celebrated on social media and some parts of this country, we tell them, riswa na washindwe katika jina la Yesu, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 2, it is not the first time, Mr. Speaker, that Raila Odinga as a Kenyan has lost. Even Nancy Kirigitu lost. Even Rachel Mamo lost. Even the latest Amina Mohammed lost in 2017. We never saw this kind of vitriol and hatred, Mr. Speaker, against a candidate like Raila Odinga, Mr. Speaker. I want to tell the nation, many people thought when Raila lost in AU, some people could be used to fight government, or unto them. It will not happen, Mr. Speaker. Because as a country, we have more better agenda to have a prosperous nation going into the future in governance, in development, and in rule of law and democracy, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud many Africans. There have been arguments that the position of Kenya in DRC crisis, the position of Kenya in issues of Gaza and Israel, the position of Kenya in Sudan crisis, where we saw rapid response here in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, and many other positions of Kenya across the world. But, Mr. Speaker, we must accept that beyond and above African Union engagement, there was the issue of religion, language, and region, and also superpowers. And I'm happy my brother from Homa Bay has said, Kenya should not look east or west. We should look where our interests are as a country, Mr. Speaker. Because we cannot depend. You saw the other day when Donald Trump came, he came with a different policy. China or the East have come with a different policy, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is neither here nor there that we are arguing today that it is based on many forces. But we know after African Union, as a continent, there are many international and global interests, whether they come from East or West, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, for Raila Odinga as our candidate, as a statesman, as a Kenyan, Mr. Speaker, to stand on the annals of history and look for this seat, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate him. It is not easy. Even in local elections, like ward elections, we have seen people who say, we will run, we will run. But when the real game is called, they are nowhere to run even for a ward election, Mr. Speaker. And that will happen in 2027, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, what is the future? As we congratulate His Excellency Mohamud Ali Yusuf of Djibouti, although I saw his speech and I was disappointed that we had more money and more power, Mr. Speaker, I thought he would have been more magnanimous. You know, in victory, under 48 laws of power, in Robert Greene, you should know when to stop celebrating. It is one of the basic tenets of 48 laws of power in Robert Greene, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and therefore it is very unfortunate to come from him when he wants to unite the country. He will be the biggest envoy. Senator Wanyonga will tell you, His Excellency Ali Mausuf Mohamud will be the biggest envoy of Africa. And therefore he should give a message of hope, of unity across the African continent, Mr. Speaker. We expect him to handle the DRC crisis, the Sudan crisis, Mr. Speaker, and many other crises that we face as a world, as a global nation, Mr. Speaker. The future of Africa, we need to agree. We need to ensure we trade more in the trade within Africa region. Why would I need a visa to travel to Ghana or even to South Africa, Mr. Speaker? And we are Africans. We should promote a visa-free Africa, where one African even work. There are many students from Masai Mara University. I wish to see them working in South Africa as experts or as civil servants in South Africa, in Namibia, in Ghana, in Tunisia, Mr. Speaker, in Djibouti, among other countries, Mr. Speaker. Number two, we must encourage open-air skies. It is unfortunate sometimes when we are flying to West Africa, you must fly to France so that you can fly back. It is more nearer to fly to London than to fly to some of the West Africa, Mr. Speaker. We must agree that we must promote open skies and aviation, Mr. Speaker, so that we can go into the future, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, as I talk, the reforms in Kenya Airways is long overdue, Mr. Speaker. We must, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that we encourage Kenya Airways, which was now pride of Africa, is disappointing, Mr. Speaker. I saw even the Nigerian embassy, Nigerian civil aviation penalizing, Mr. Speaker, penalizing the KQ.
Sorry, Senator Charargei. What is it you are saying, Senator Morgan?
Fax Ghana?
Go to the dispatch box if it's not working.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Speaker, you know, everything that we say on this floor goes on record. And Senator Charargei knows that under our standing orders, he should not make statements that are misleading. He has just stated on this floor that to fly to West Africa, you first go to France, then come back to West Africa. Yet, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways flies direct to several West African countries, including Nigeria, direct to Nigeria. It goes to Cameroon. It goes to Bamako in Mali. So is it in order, Mr. Speaker, to make a misleading statement on the floor that the skies in Africa have not been opened to our Kenya Airways?
Senator Charargei, which country were you referring to?
His mine is in Nyamira. Mr. Speaker, what I said is some flights. I didn't say Kenya Airways. He needs to, you can check the answer. I say some flights. I did not say Kenya Airways specifically. I just came into Kenya Airways by saying we must revive Kenya Airways, we must revitalize Kenya Airways to turn around profitability. Because the way Kenya Airways is being run is being run down, Mr. Speaker. And the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, one of our key components was aviation turnaround in terms of increasing cargo to ensure we give more revenue to Kenya Airways. And we have had a discussion about Kenya Airways. We must agree that even as we ensure there is open skies, an aviation sector in Africa, we must make it vibrant so that is movement of people and services, Mr. Speaker. And I can see the senior counsel is nodding in agreement that Kenya Airways must be reformed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of military cooperation, I agree. We need to work more better. We have seen even, and I'm happy President William Ruto has requested African Union to include Haiti as one of the as one of the member of African Union, Mr. Speaker. And we are proud as Kenya We have read the mission in Haiti, Mr. Speaker, despite opposition from even within the country and outside the country. And therefore, as Kenya, we have a lot to showcase the world in terms of issues that we... So military cooperation, I know when African Union and Kenya is called upon, we have crisis in DRC, Mr. Speaker. I am told the M23 are making progress in Bukavu. They are headed near to Burundi, Bujumbura. We must Africa, Mr. We have Sudan crisis, where rapid response RSF is in Sudan, in Africa, in Kenya here. And I have seen the statement from Foreign Affairs from Sudan. We must pursue peace the way we did for South Sudan, Mr. Speaker. We need a peaceful Africa to ensure we have trade. And the only person who could bring experience, who knows the dynamics of Africa, the true son of Pan-Africanism was Raila Odinga. I still insist African Union lost the best. Despite that, His Excellency Ali Mausuf won. Winning in an election does not mean you are competent. It means you have just won. But it doesn't mean that you are bringing the best on the table, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Raila Odinga, with so many years that he has fought for rule of democracy, human rights, devolution, the new constitution, the track record was well-decorated CV that could transform this country, Mr. Speaker. And Raila Odinga has been one of the few leaders who is not tribal. If you see at the voting pattern, in many elections he has contested in this country, he has gotten the votes from across the country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we need to ensure. Mr. Speaker, the third point I wanted to make, I think it is now the right time to fully implement the NADCO report, the National Dialogue Report, Mr. Speaker. Raila Odinga has huge and well-decorated track record of fighting for democracy, rule of law. When Raila Odinga was fighting the previous regime, some of the people who are in opposition, Mr. Speaker, who are now correcting messes, were in that government that were pursuing even abuses of human rights, and they want to lecture us about, Mr. Speaker, how a country should be run. When Raila Odinga was fighting for this constitution, rule of law, democracy, some of the people who are correcting him, Mr. Speaker, who are fighting him now, were in that system, Mr. Speaker, the KANU system, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, when Raila Odinga comes, we can use him. He has huge, he's an elder statesman, Mr. Speaker, and the full implementation of NADCO, we must make Raila Odinga the Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya. Even the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Prime Cabinet Minister, he must, Mr. Speaker, be given that position to assist in expanding, deepening, and widening the broad-based government and stability of this country, Mr. Speaker. We have even started, Mr. Speaker, we have even started even broad-based within Parliament.
Senator Methu, what's your point of order?
Of course, I would not have wanted to interrupt the good senator from Nandi, but I'm standing on Standing Order 105, responsibility of statement of fact. May I know, because I have read the NADCO report page by page to the last page, which of the recommendations of the NADCO report he bases his argument that Raila Odinga is the one that will become the Prime Minister? Because our position of the Prime Minister will be there, but there is nowhere in the NADCO report that it proposes the Honorable Raila Odinga. And actually, I don't think the NADCO report was formulated to assimilate and have Raila Odinga join government. It is actually demeaning the position of Raila Odinga to say that the whole NADCO report is just about creating a position for him. So, Honorable Speaker, I wish that you direct this and find the senator out of order for insinuating that the NADCO report has a clause that proposes that Raila Odinga, the person, becomes the Prime Minister.
Very well, Senator Charargei. I think you've understood the question.
Yes, I've understood. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for seeing you today in the morning. Mr. Speaker, as I encourage, and after this I will buy an air comp for my brother, Senator Methu, I agree. In fact, he has answered himself by insinuating. I didn't say the NADCO report has the name Raila Odinga. As a leader, I believe Raila Odinga should serve this nation in any capacity. And in my own opinion, as the senator of Nandi, I feel he should be given the position of Prime Minister. We need to expand and fully implement the National Dialogue Committee report. We are already doing broad-based. We are now in this across the aisle. We are exchanging chairs within Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I want to insist, even as we move forward, as we broaden the engagement of broad-based government, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, Mr. Speaker, has the history of this country. He has the track record of rule of law. He has served as a prime minister before. There is nothing unique, Mr. Speaker. Even as we push to amend the constitution in Article 257 or 256, either by popular or parliamentary initiative of the Constitution 2010, he can serve at the moment as the Prime Cabinet Secretary as we reorganize the government going into the future, Mr. Speaker. Even Senator, it is free, my brother Senator Metu, and he knows I have tremendous respect and we respect each other. We are even pushing for an indictment of official opposition leader. So as they fight in his formation, Mr. Speaker, I'm telling them there is already a seat where the people like Wajakoya, people like Alonzo Mushoka, people like, and the rest who will lose in 2027 after William Ruto is re-elected by the support of Baba, they will be automatically, will finance them. We'll give them an office, we'll give them official cars, we'll ensure they sit either in the Senate and National Assembly. And that is the NADCO report that we are proposing, Mr. Speaker. So no one will lose. We hate to see people who are so losers, who are shouting in centers, funerals. We want them to stop talking from funerals. We want them to come to the floor of the House and critique the government. And I want to assure you, with the support of Raila Amolo Odinga, William Ruto will be elected by over 80% for his re-election. In 2032, people like Eddie, tunaweza anza kujipanga at that level, Mr. Speaker. So I want to say in conclusion, because I've seen my time is spent, Mr. Speaker, let us have an open mind. This nation, the young people sitting at your gallery, need the guidance and leadership of this. We must agree as a nation. We want a nation. When you go here to Tanzania, they don't care which tribe you come from. You are a Chaga, you are a Suguma, you are a Maasai. They don't care who you are. They will only elect you because you are competent, Mr. Speaker. So we need to encourage as a nation. Let us have a tribeless leadership, Mr. Speaker. And I want to encourage the minority side led by Senator Ledama. Even as we engage on broad-based, you must clean your house. We cannot be saying we are broad-based, yet we have people who are opposing the broad-based within yourself, Mr. Speaker. And I know you know the person you are seated next to you on your right, Mr. Speaker. It is better to give that seat to Senator Hedy and other people, Mr. Speaker, so that you can have a one united front. Let us release people like Senator Wambua to go and oppose government freely instead of opposing government within. This is a broad-based government. May it long live under the leadership of William Ruto and Raila Odinga. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I support and I thank you.
Senator Eddie Okech. Imepewa list.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And as the leader of the Migori delegation, I must say that on this motion, my people who gave me the chance to be in this house are sad. I will not lie that they were disappointed that Raila Amolo Odinga did not become the AUC chair. They had hopes and dreams that Raila Odinga would become the AUC chair so that he could be able to be a bridge between excellence in the continent and our people in Kenya. And indeed, the people of Migori County were championing and rooting for Raila Amolo Odinga. So it is no question that they are sad. And Mr. Speaker, in any sad situation, whether it's death or losing an election like what happened, Mr. Speaker, if you are sad and somebody else is laughing, that person does not want the best for you. It doesn't matter whether whatever brings you sadness is something that brings them happiness. It just means that they don't want something good for you. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that anybody who has laughed, celebrated the loss that we had in Addis has got no best interest of our people at heart, especially the delegation that I'm presenting and representing from Migori County. I remember, Mr. Speaker, Nelson Mandela, when one day he was asked by a journalist, on his take on the Cuban positioning in terms of the Cuban war with regards to other people as well as Muammar Gaddafi. And Mandela told the journalist that many people think that their enemies are supposed to be South African enemies. Just because you have got some enemies somewhere, they are not going to be ODM's enemies. We as ODM, and we as a people from Migori, and we as a people from Nyanza, and I believe this is the spirit that every other nation that finds himself or themselves in the corridors of the country called Kenya, we don't make enemies because other people have enemies. We treat people with the same attitude that they treat us with. That is the area with which we differ with many people who celebrated this. But that said, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Charargei, would you like to be informed by Senator Charargei?
Senator Charargei is a very serious ranking member. Let him inform me, but within a short time.
Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to, with a lot of indulgence, to inform on the issue of Mandela, it was not Cuban war. It was the Palestinian war on the issue of PLO. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, you know, Charargei. Anyway, thank you. But Mr. Mandela was asked the question on the issue of his relationship with the Cuban fighter, we call him Fidel Castro, and also on the issue of him with Muammar Gaddafi, who tend to have been very polarizing figure in a number of, it was not just one war, but a number of issues that affect the entire continent at that time when South Africa was being seen as a terrorist nation just because they were fighting apartheid in South Africa. And his thinking was that any relationship that they're making with people or any friendship that they're making with different people is based on how those people treat South Africa, not based on the enemies that those people have. And that's what I'm trying to say also, that our politics as ODM going forward will be based on how people treat us and how people respect us and the contribution that we make to the country. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that there is a Swahili word that says Mugala muue aki mpe. Despite the differences that different people have with President Ruto in the borders of our country, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we are very grateful for the kind of support, for the kind of commitment, for the kind of dedication that President Ruto gave to Raila Amolo Odinga in the process of running for AU. And I want to tell the President, Mr. Speaker, that there's a book that Chinua Achebe expresses about a lizard that fell out of an iroko tree. You know, this lizard fell out of an iroko tree onto a rock, but the lizard did not break its back. And around it, because it's just a lizard, other animals were there, but they were not able to celebrate the lizard. So the lizard looked around, and because nobody saw the lizard dropping down as something big and not breaking its back, the lizard said to itself, I am so strong that I fell out of that iroko tree, but I didn't break my back. I'm telling the President that even if some people want to close their eyes on the kind of support that you gave Raila Amolo Odinga, even if somebody will not say thank you to you, even if some people will talk negatively about it and try to put you down, be the lizard that fell off the iroko tree and thank yourself because you know how much effort you put on this campaign. That's a very sincere thank you from me. But then I must also thank Raila Amolo Odinga, because taking a continental stage in a place that you don't have control, His Excellency the PM Raila Amolo Odinga, taking a serious continental stage in a place that don't have control of presidents, when people are not bold enough to take that step, that is valor, That's a towering spirit that we want to see of many Kenyans. And I hope that many young people can glean morals from the courage of Raila Amolo Odinga to be able to take some risks. That even you as a young person today, whether you're Gen Z or you're a millennial, remember the times that perhaps you grew in Kawangware and you could play some games, some card games, and people could discourage you, but you never saw why you should not take the risk of being in the streets. But then, today, you are something. Raila Amolo Odinga has taught us that you can keep on fighting and taking risks for dreams that are bigger than you. And if your dreams as young people don't scare you, you're not worth living. Take big dreams. Take big steps. Learn from Raila Amolo Odinga. He has fought big dreams that some of them today we are benefiting from. There are countries that have got internet today, but you cannot post things and talk about anybody on the internet because you fear that you will go to jail, because you fear that you will die, because you fear that you will have serious consequences. But in our nation today, many young people enjoy not just the social media platform, but they enjoy any kind of expression that they want to have on those platforms. It is not to be taken for granted that those rights that you're enjoying to be able to express yourself online are not just rights. They are rights that saw people like Raila Amolo Odinga battered, beaten, and taken to detention for you to have those rights. So even as some people try to put him down, that valor, that courage, and that towering spirit must live among young people in the country called Kenya and in the African continent. But that said also, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Odinga did not just show up on this race as just a candidate who had no contribution to make to our country and who just wanted a job. On February 27th, last year, Mr. Speaker, Raila Amolo Odinga did express himself to the agenda and the vision that he was bringing to this position. And I want to agree with what my brother Senator Kajwang said, that this vision that Raila had is not just vision for the sake of getting an AU position. It's a vision that we as leaders in this country, extended to leaders in other countries that believe in the African dream, and more so extended to the leader from Djibouti, my brother Ali Yusuf, who has taken this position, must cast their eye upon. Because African continent is constantly under threat, Mr. Speaker. The movement of goods, the movement of capital, the movement of labor in the continent to make a working economy is still a daydream that we have never achieved. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of AU is not just about regional politics in the African continent. It is also about global politics, because we are competing with other continents as well. We have got China, which is a nation and also as big as a continent with populations of over 1 billion. We are competing with them. We have got America that we are competing with. And don't think that the advancement of a common market in the African continent is something pleasing to other people. And therefore, it's a commitment that cannot just be an issue of politics in the continent. It's an issue that the continent must commit to, the dream that Raila had, from making sure that goods and services can move with robust infrastructure. Raila Odinga held a very strong view on why we must make sure that we silence the guns in the continent and ensure that the security, so that capital, goods, and people can be able to move in the continent and work and build a continent. Raila Odinga held the strong view that we need serious connectivity between Djibouti and Senegal, between Cape Town and Cairo, so that movement of people, goods, and services can be easy. Raila Odinga held the very strong view that the continent must have a single visa, so that moving around the continent can be easy, so that a Kenyan who is born today without opportunities in the country called Kenya can as well move to Nigeria easily or move to Egypt easily and be able to find opportunity for themselves. So that somebody who is in Egypt, who cannot find their talent meeting the opportunities in Egypt, can move to Kenya and find opportunity that works for them. The dream of Raila Amolo Odinga was a continent where you are born does not define whether you die or you live. That dream must live with the people of Africa. That dream must live with the President of Africa. And Mr. Speaker, it is not a small dream. It is a dream for which some of us who went to Addis Ababa and saw what happened in Addis Ababa have picked that dream, we will continue with it. That one day, if not us, our children will see a united continent on the basis of economic excellence, on the basis of social justice, on the basis of politics that is good, that can advance the quality of life for the African people. And those dreams will not die because Raila Amolo Odinga cast them on that stage called the continental stage. So it's not a matter of light politics of just being in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have seen in this continent young people being radicalized because of lack of economic opportunities. Economic emptiness, turning young people to be Al-Shabaab militia. Economic emptiness, turning young people to be Boko Haram militia. And we see that same kind of trend even in the continent today, that people who the country had no confidence in, when they were serving at highest level and they were impeached in these houses, Mr. Speaker, radicalizing even young people who are in this house. You find young people being made to sing Mau Mau wars, to dress like Mau Mau, to live themselves unkempt like Mau Mau, to start behaving like Mau Mau in a way that is radicalizing people who are elected to come to this house to be able to promote a concept of national unity, promote a dream for young people in this country, and they're being radicalized. Therefore, we must start thinking, Mr. Speaker, we must start thinking of how we can be able to make sure that economic opportunity and good policies for young people are made possible so that radicalization of young people can stop, not only in Kenya but in the continent.
Senator Wakoli, what's your point of order?
This is our honorable house of distinguished high-profile leaders. My good brother, Honorable Eddie, has alluded that honorable members are dressed like, look like, hair like Mau Mau. Honorable Chair, it's important for my good friend to have responsibility of statement of facts, but coming out clearly and showing to us among members here or those without this place. Who is it that looks like Mau Mau? Hair like Mau Mau. So that the Honorable House is cleared of any misconduct. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Speaker.
Speaker, thank you. It seems like the senator, the good senator from Bungoma, is the only visitor from Jerusalem. I will send him some pictures of Mau Mau, people who fought, and then he can make his own judgment to look at people around who look like Mau Mau. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I must say also that we must also accept the negative that happened in this area, called the fighting for this seat. I want to encourage the majority leader that let's not be blind to the fact that foreign policy in this country is still not sober. And there are positions that you can take as a people that must be based on a foreign policy. Today, Mr. Speaker, whether you are a Democrat or you are a Republican in the American politics, when it comes to certain issues, America has clear foreign policy about them. And I don't think that we don't have a foreign policy that works. I think that we don't have a domestic policy that works. Because if you've got a strong domestic policy, Mr. Speaker, then you extrapolate your foreign policy from your domestic policy. What is our policy about our businesses, Mr. Speaker, for instance? That our businesses that are locally grown, homegrown, must be protected, must be taken care of. If that is our domestic policy, then that becomes the interface with which we interact with the external world. If our foreign policy here around our resources is strong, then that becomes the angle with which we relate with other countries. It is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the first round and the second round of Mr. Odinga's votes he had consistently been ahead of Djibouti. And even if we don't know who voted because it was secret ballot, Mr. Speaker, we can say without a doubt that the shift started happening when the candidate for Madagascar dropped. And that shift, when it happened, we saw the Djibouti candidate gaining votes. Therefore, even if we are not mathematically sound, we can argue that there is high likelihood that the people who are voting for Madagascar shifted to Djibouti. And that is an indictment to our foreign policy. Why did they shift in that direction? It means that we haven't chosen as a people that on certain issues that are cross-cutting in the continent, whether it's the DRC war, whether it is the coup in the continent, a number of coups are in the continent, whether it is the issue around Israel, whether it's the issues around Commonwealth, all these issues, Mr. Speaker, must have one inclination. They must have an inclination towards a sober domestic policy that defines how then we engage the external world. It has to be that our nation must advance our national interests first when we are approaching the world, because that is the only way we survive as a country. And there are a number of areas that I think that these particular laws gives us an opportunity as a nation, gives the president an opportunity as our leader, gives the executive an opportunity as the cabinet, and gives us as a parliament opportunity to be brave, to be courageous, to be honest to ourselves, and interrogate the strength of our policy when it comes to our domestic inclination. Because if we don't interrogate that and bury our heads in the sand, Mr. Speaker, we will not be stronger tomorrow to face such wars. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I must say that Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, His Excellency Baba, is a person who has got zeal and zest to have a country that works. Even at instances that in the past regimes, Baba has supported some elements of people in governance, he has never taken any opportunity or discarded any opportunity to talk about the ills that are in government, to talk about the excesses that are in government, and to talk about bad things that are going on in the country. Including recently, when we were dealing with the issues of abductions, Baba Raila Amolo Odinga stood firm and fought abductions. And so are his soldiers who fought abductions. I can assure you that Raila Amolo Odinga does not need to be told where he's going to go. When he comes, after resting, he will give us direction on where he stands and where he goes, and therefore speculations must...
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wambua.